It's a good thing we don't live closer to the San Andreas Fault. It could have been a lot worse.
How could it be worse? Look at all my stuff is broken. The walls all cracked. Oh, no. I don't understand how people move out here. Earthquakes on the coast, 120-degree temperature on the desert. Y'all ought to change the name of California to Shake and Bake USA.
I just wanted to let you know about my study group.
Oh, don't be a fuddy-duddy. I'll be your study buddy.
I'm about to embark on one of the great challenges of my scientific career.
This work right here is going to change history.
I think this is going to be our greatest mission.
I don't have time to study. I'll never get into Stanford.
I got big plans for you tonight. I got maps, I got charts. I'm going to see you through this because my credibility is on the line.
It's at this point that you'll want to start taking notes.
Welcome to the Sitcom Study, the podcast where we contemplate the TV shows we grew up with and search for the truth and wisdom within the tropes and cliches. And Amy, what's the trope we're talking about tonight?
Hold on, Jay, get in the doorway, the big one's coming!
Earthquakes.
There you go.
Indeed is the topic. Yeah. Earthquakes in sitcoms. There was lots to choose from. This is another one, just like last week's Babysitting Adventures, where I feel like they're coming from different angles, more overlap this time, but different angles. Some of the ones that we didn't watch were the Laverne and Shirley season premiere, which the title of it...
It's such a bummer. This is when they moved out to California.
Yeah.
It's such a bummer that it's so hard to find Laverne and Shirley.
Yeah, that episode is the season 5 premiere, I think, of Laverne and Shirley.
6 or something like that.
It's called Welcome to Burbank, and I bring that up right off the bat to just say that's one of the subtropes of earthquakes. Sometimes it's a California thing, right? Sometimes it's all about, people from other parts of the country, other parts of the world can't handle the earthquake. Sometimes it's about people sort of reflecting on their own mortality and kind of realizing like the lack of control that they have in the face of these acts of God. All kinds of soul searching, I feel like, that happens in sitcoms.
In natural disasters.
Yeah, when natural disasters strike. So let me ask you, because I don't think we've experienced this together. Have you ever been affected by an earthquake?
I have never experienced an earthquake firsthand. I had an aunt whose house got broken in half by an earthquake. But no, I have never experienced one. In fact, the two that have happened in this area since I've lived up here, I happen to be out of town for both of them.
Yeah, I remember that last one that happened. And yeah, we lived in Yonkers at that time. I felt it and heard it and did eventually conclude, wow, that seemed like a mild earthquake. But we were far enough away that it didn't cause any damage. There was one that happened when I was a kid, also living in Westchester, where there was, like, that one did actually kind of shake things a little bit, but not enough to really do any damage. You know, having grown up in the East Coast, born and bred, I never really had to deal with this. I will say, as a small child, I was terrified at the notion of an earthquake striking when I was at certain structures, particularly Yankee Stadium.
Probably because you saw the Giant Stadium when we were really little. That earthquake happened at Giant Stadium.
I think this was before that.
Really? And because, like, I thought it was in the 80s, so you must have been pretty young.
This was the 80s, like early 80s.
And like everything just came crashing down. That's what the Full House episode we didn't watch the Full House episode. That's what that one's about. And because all like people were like falling out of the stands. It happened during a baseball game.
Yeah, earthquakes were, they sort of came back in vogue in the 80s because of the big one, the California earthquake. But no, I'm pretty sure even before that, the Yankee Stadium, the area leading up to it, is this big labyrinthine mess of elevated highways. Major Deegan and the Cross Bronx Expressway and all these things are these bridges and highways that are very vertical, all stacked on top of each other. It's a little freaky if you're just like somebody from the flatlands.
And again, that there were all these images from San Francisco of the interstates falling on each other. Yeah. I'm so wondering if these things all kind of coalesced in your brain.
You go in the stadium and it's this mess of escalators and the same thing that makes stadiums kind of cool, that it's this like open air thing and you sort of get a sense of how high you are and all the different tiers. As a kid, I found that really scary. The idea of like, what if there's an earthquake while we're here? And so that's it. That's my relationship to earthquakes. I got over it eventually. And yeah, it has not been a big presence in my life.
Yes, earthquakes to me are like quicksand because it's like this thing everyone talks about, but like I always move away or I'm always out of town when they happen.
Yeah, well,
knock on wood for sure.
You're out of town when I step in quicksand.
Exactly.
What are our shows? What did we watch?
All right, we watched Sanford Son, Season 5, Episode 1, Earthquake, Part 2. Gimme a Break, Season 4, Episode 19, The Earthquake. Alf, Season 3, Episode 25, Shake, Rattle, and Roll. And Modern Family, Season 2, Episode 3, Earthquake.
Yeah, Sanford Son is always a treat. We love this show. We love its sort of simplicity. As soon as Red Fox steps onto the set, the audience goes wild. You just immediately get that live, that like vaudeville feel we always talk about, that it's just like a few guys on a stage, simple set, and just everyone
and
just having fun.
And this one was particularly loose. There are multiple times in this episode where he is like just laughing because Red Fox is so funny. Yeah. And he's having a good time and the audience is cheering him on while the whole set is shaking. And they're, actually probably the whole set isn't shaking. It's more them pretending like it's shaking to the audience. And so the audience is dying laughing. But yeah, there's multiple times where you see him break character.
Yeah, I think I was noticing about him that the same observation I made about Roseanne when we last talked about her, I would make about him, that there's this looseness. You see him kind of reaching for the lines sometimes, not always having the dialogue like ready to go in his mind, but it just kind of works. And it's kind of thing, as a director, it would drive me crazy when actors don't know the lines forwards and backwards, because to me it's like that's whatever brain power that's going to remember the line is like that's inhibiting your performance and that's getting in the way and that's going to mess you up. But there are these certain performers, these comedians turned sitcom actors that like they're just so sort of comfortable in their persona that looseness of not having it 100% memorized and just kind of fumbling around a little bit just somehow like makes it more organic.
Oh yeah, and this show in particular, I think the reason that we see the son having this kind of like these moments where he's breaking is because Red Fox is just improvising. Yeah. And this is very much like a Mork and Mindy situation where it's like they write in the script, all right, let Red Fox do his thing. Yeah. And then he would go on for, a few pages. They'd have a few little loose notes in there. And then, they'd say to the son, like, oh, the point of this scene is this. So just make sure you get these couple of lines in. And so he's just letting, Sanford riff, and then he's gonna, at some point bring it home with this line. But yeah, I noticed, like I said, not Red Fox breaking character. I noticed Lamont breaking character, like multiple times throughout this episode, because he was just laughing.
Yeah. Yeah, this starts with the earthquake having already happened. We're going to get more, but the set is in ruins. It immediately reminded me of the Fire podcast we did about, how you char up your sitcom set.
Right, because you're going to get a new set.
Yeah, and so everything's all out of whack. Again, audience goes crazy as soon as he walks in. He calls the police because he thinks that somebody broke in.
Yes.
The phone call ends with him saying, "Yo mama."
Right.
And like, hanging up.
The world's first recorded Yo mama joke.
Yeah, I was like, wow, I didn't know that goes back this far.
74?
Yeah, when Lamont comes and, he says, "Nobody broke in, Pop." He goes, "What, you call this a self-inflicted wound?" He's talking about his little toy horse, just lots of funny little things.
Yes.
Right away. But yeah, Lamont explains, no, there was an earthquake, and then another earthquake strikes. Now, you say that, it's mostly the camera jostling. Like, sure, they're doing the Star Trek thing of jostling the camera, but I want to start tracking this right away.
Oh, yeah, they did a great job.
I would call this the Sanford Son stunt spectacular.
Oh, yeah.
Like, they've got this set rigged to high heaven.
Oh, yes.
Cabinet doors flying off, the sink going crazy, sparks and water and everything.
And they saved some of it, though, because they did two earthquake scenes, two big ones. They had like a small one in between. So they really had like three earthquake moments. And the first one, they let go on for a long time. We saw the sink going. Yeah. We saw like cabinet
all
doors.
These different gags one by one. And again, it really has this...
things falling off walls, things falling
dust
down next to them.
And this staged show energy of like, this is for this audience.
Like the play that goes wrong.
They're experiencing this. Yeah, and I'm sure the guy told everybody, okay, we're going to shake up the camera and make believe like you're shaking, but still, even without that, all these crazy explosions and things breaking and everything, it is wild.
Yeah.
And it ends with them just kind of, it ends with Lamont the son going, "It's all over, Pop, how do you feel?" And Sanford goes, "Fine, thank you, how are you?" And that's it. And Sanford is going to start our tradition of pretty much all of our characters, to one extent or another, having this sort of like, I'm scared, I need to like remove risk and danger from my life. Just this whole reckoning that
has to be, I have to make myself safe, and I have to do something pretty ridiculous to do that, right? Yeah. So you can kind of track this through a character in each one of the shows, right? Like Alf kind of goes on this whole life journey as well. And even a little bit in Gimme a Break, there's like, there's some moments of that.
Well, that's different because that's going to have the marooned aspect of it. But this one, Sanford, do they live in LA?
Yes.
Watts. Yeah, they do. And so he's going to, in the tradition of several sitcom characters we've already covered throughout the ages, he's going to go to Las Vegas with the sitcom camera crew and have a full-on on-location Vegas episode.
Oh, man. And when we talk about throwback Vegas images, this has all of them. It is so good. But so the setup for him going to Vegas is that he is going to sell the house cheap. He's going to sell all of his junk and get the heck out of LA.
Yeah, sell it to the Johnsons. We have to mention all of the white characters on this show are these like caricatures, like when Damon Wayans would play a white person on In Living Color or something. They're just so, this guy that comes to buy the house is like Ed Grimley from SNL, just like this lanky guy with the ridiculous greasy hair, and their voices, like they're just so
it's like,
square.
Well, let me get the wife because, I'm in finance and I think I'd like to buy this. This looks like a pretty good property.
Yeah,
We're from Kansas City.
Weird Al or something. Yeah, like they just, they're these caricatures, very yokely, very square. It's also, part of this is...
I kind of love it, though, as like a turnabout to
absolutely.
the like characterizations that...
all the jive-talking bullshit that they were dealing with. And they have a police officer friend and just this other old dude that comes by.
The police officer guy has this like radio announcer kind of voice.
Yeah,
it is
also
really,
very square.
Yeah, it's very square.
Yeah, and they have this old guy that's also their friend, and they're all talking about how the newspaper says that a Russian cosmologist or a team of Russian cosmologists...
Not cosmologists.
What do you mean?
Seismologists.
Russian seismologists.
Cosmologist? Isn't a cosmologist like somebody who does
like
makeup?
Who does your makeup? The Russian cosmetic technician. The Russian seismologist has predicted that Sanford & Son's house is going to be like the epicenter of the next earthquake. So all of these things are conspiring.
And that's when Fred is like, that's it. I'm out. I'm selling everything. And Lamont's like, whoa. Let's be reasonable here. We need a place to live. We can't just like sell the house and sell everything at half price. It's not a fire sale. Like we need to actually have a nest egg if we're going to get rid of everything. And Fred's not hearing it. He's like, that's it. I'm selling everything. And then, like you said, we get this amazing montage of him wandering the streets of Vegas.
Yeah.
And
a lot of it filmed unbeknownst to the people on the street.
Well, and the people on the street who are noticing that Red Fox is walking down the street with his limp, with his stiff one leg and doing this whole bit, losing his hat and everything. The amount of people on the street who were staring at the cameras and staring at him in these shots, it's like they didn't have permits. They were just like guerrilla styling this.
They were
and
just grabbing
people were like, people on their Vegas vacation were on the show and like staring at the camera. There was one scene where he's talking to Stephen Eady, which was like a 1970s lounge act that was, popular.
Several cameos in this.
Yes. There was a guy who was sitting at the slot machine right behind where Fred Sanford was standing through the entire scene, and they didn't make any move to move the camera off this guy. You could see him the whole time just sitting there staring directly at Sanford, like sitting with his legs wide open, like mouth agape, just watching the whole thing happen. It was so funny.
Not a ton of quality control, but they're shooting all this in the Vegas casinos, just like Benson, just like Who's the Boss. We covered at least 2 or 3.
That went to Vegas.
Yeah,
Who's the Boss went to the beach. I don't know. We didn't see them in Vegas.
No, I'm remembering it. I'm remembering somebody else.
So it was so good though. Like, I mean, we've talked before on the podcast how we saw Wayne Newton in Vegas. We saw an old billboard, like an old marquee of him. There was a marquee for Joan Rivers, for I think Bobby Vinton, like all of these.
The whole time there's like this old timey like jazz music playing, like as if from an old like phonograph, and so you're watching Red Fox walk around like sort of dressed in his rumpled old suit, like
he's
a Depression era
tiny
hobo.
Suitcase,
with his little suitcase
and a paper bag with handles full of things.
It starts to just become like surreal after a while because it's just this kind of extended montage. It's no dialogue, just this like crackly old music and this old guy walking around. He's not really interacting with anybody because like it starts out with him out on the streets and then the casino and then he gets like kicked out.
So the sound, I think the sound quality on the street was kind of bad. So like the couple times they did put mics up on the street, it was really hard to hear.
There are some hilarious ADR, like dialogue that they had to loop in where he goes,
couple. So he eventually meets some other, like you said, a bunch of cameos. And then he ends up losing all his money.
This is the second time in a Sanford Son episode where we've seen him have to face off against some big, tough guy. The same thing happened to him in an airplane. Where,
that's right.
Just some big guy kind of turns around. And he's like, oh, sorry, never mind, sir. And like has to walk away.
So before he goes into the hotel, he's like taking a load off. Before he goes into the casino, and that's that ADR moment where this couple comes up and he overhears them talking about this being the Caesar's wishing fountain or something. So he throws a quarter in, and then later on, he runs out of all his money and he remembers, wait, there's a quarter that is mine in this fountain, so I've got to go back outside. And then the security guard catches him trying to take the quarters out of the fountain, and he's like, you better get out of here, I'm going to call the cops. And then that's why he got in trouble.
Yeah. Now talk about your standard sitcom story. Like, basically, he gets homesick and he hitchhikes his way back to Watts.
So he loses all his money. He has, he's sold...
Which isn't much because he sold his business
everything for
nothing.
Cheap. Right. So he sells his house for half of what it's worth. He sells all of their junk, like all of their inventory for, he ends up with like, I think he said $250. That's all he has to his name.
We didn't mention that an earthquake happened as he was making his sales pitch to the Johnsons. Right. And he told them that it was the subway. But then,
and they're like, oh, there's a subway in LA? I didn't know. And he's like, yeah, just keep walking. You'll find the entrance.
Yeah, but then either him or Lamont like sort of pulls the plug on it and says like, oh, we couldn't do that. There's a law against.
Not until, so like not in that moment. So so basically he loses all his money in Vegas. He calls Lamont and is like, hey, I'm out of money. And Lamont's like, I don't know what you want me to do about it. Like, I don't even have a place to live either because you sold this house. So Fred hitches a ride back to LA to try to come home and you know.
Yeah, he's got a sign that says Watts.
Right, which is
Beverly
their neighborhood.
Hills on the back.
Right.
Is the idea that he switches it based on like if posh people come by?
No, he switches it because no one would pick him up when it said Watts.
Okay,
so then he
has
turned
to
it
purport
around.
like he's from Beverly Hills.
Right. And then when they still didn't pick him up, even though it said Beverly Hills, he was like, racist! And he's like yelling at the cars as they go by. And so then we're back at the house, and that's when we find out that Lamont has actually saved the day. He called the Johnsons. He told them the truth. And he did that because he found out that what his dad had done was illegal. And the Johnsons were like, we'll give us our money back immediately and we won't press charges. And he's like, great, thank you. And so they at least get to keep the house, but now all the stuff is gone.
Yeah. And as they're having their like heart to heart moment and Red is apologizing for his impulsive nature and whatnot, another earthquake happens.
Yes.
Like another major stunt spectacular, debris flying.
This is
smoke,
when the sparks
pistons.
happen. Yeah, we didn't
sparks.
get fire and sparks in the first one. We got water this time. And then last time there was like dust coming down from the ceiling and little bits of ceiling falling. This time we get a whole light fixture and chunk of ceiling that like falls down and it lands on the couch. So they keep having to, you know how these sitcom sets are, right? Like they're way taller than they ever make us think they are because of the way they shoot them. But because of all of this crazy stuff happening and the way the guys have to keep getting closer and closer to the camera so they don't actually get hit by any of the debris that's been rigged to fall, what ends up happening is that it's just like that Laverne and Shirley episode where they were they're doing the Olympics race. And so, they're too far out. The guys are really close to the camera. It's like the perspective is all off. You can tell that this is such a set.
It's almost like a precursor to the like Michael Bay quick cutting, like early 2000s sort of like disorienting.
Yeah, they actually did.
Scheme.
They tried to do that. They tried to zoom in on lots of different things.
They have little quick details of like a corner to kind of disorient you and just make it more manic and crazy.
It was good though. Like I was like, okay, 1975, good job.
We often talk about how like the sitcom version of the action is ridiculous. You know, they go to have like a little fist fight or a wrestling moment and they don't pull it off. But all these shows, make a pretty valiant attempt at it. And then we get the fun little sitcom button of Lamont going, screw this, I'm going to Vegas, right?
Yes.
And he flees. And that's it.
So my one issue with this show, this one in particular, was that these are people who live in California. The number one rule when there's an earthquake is go stand in a doorway. They ran to the center of the room and hugged each other every time instead of going into a doorway. In every other episode, we get the reference of like, go into a doorway, go into a doorway.
Maybe in the 70s, the public awareness campaign about going into the doorway hadn't been launched and people didn't know.
Maybe.
I mean, I don't know.
I just I thought it was just because they had to have them in the middle of the room for all their gags.
that too. Yeah, who knows? But definitely. Again, just like if this show is Red Fox, as a sort of George Jefferson-esque, just like give him some sort of catalyst, some sort of stimulus to react to want to make some kind of drastic change to his life. Earthquake is perfect for that.
Perfect.
If anything, the only thing that doesn't stand to reason to me is he's this old dude that seems to have lived there like forever. How is he? How is this his first earthquake? Like,
well, it's not that it's his first. It's that now that the Russian seismologists have decided that the fault goes directly through their address.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, let's see how this continues with Gimme a Break.
Season 4, Episode 19, Earthquake.
Yeah, so we've talked about this a couple times now. We were with old Nell when she was going on a diet. And
young Nell.
Good old Nell.
Yes, and this is much later now. So, last time we saw this show, it was kind of an earlier season. The three daughters were much younger. Now we're in the later seasons. I don't know if you noticed this, but the dad, the guy who plays the dad, he looked very different in this episode. He is very close to when he actually dies.
Death?
Yeah.
Fair enough.
And he was really ill, and you can tell how much weight he's lost. He's wearing this suit that kind of like sits really big on him, and his face is kind of gaunt. And I was like, man, the dad looks kind of different. Like, he looks so much older. What's going on with him? It hasn't been that many seasons. And then I remembered, oh, that's right. He actually like died during this or I don't think this was the last season. They had, one more or maybe two more, but yeah, he was getting close. And Joey Lawrence is already on the show, and is Nell's like adopted foster son.
Yes, little Joey Lawrence doesn't have a ton to do here, but
not a lot with the kids at all in this episode.
Yes, but he's important to the story because we find out at the beginning that he's racked up a $1,600 library bill.
Right. He has checked out a rare book from the library and has not returned it with an excess of 5 days.
Yeah. This was just after Nell had to call the auto shop and deal with Sal, like Bonaducci or something. I forget the name they keep saying.
Yeah, some like Italian name.
They established that, there's this crooked auto mechanic that Nell has had to deal with on the phone.
Yes, and it just so happens that his twin sister is the one who works in the library at the desk where she calls to try to deal with the library bill.
This is a pretty rough existence for Nell to get back to the house and just have to get on the phone with these service people and bureaucrats and stuff. I felt her pain.
I 100% felt her pain. This was like, wolf.
Yeah.
And so she says, all right, well, I'm going to go down to the library to see if I can get this straightened out.
There's to call Mrs. Crawford at the library.
Right.
And she says that she's the sister of Sal. Does Nell say something like, oh, you must know, like, Sal Bonaducci? And she's like, yeah, he's my brother.
Well, yeah, so she was saying, she was laying on all the sweetness to try to get this fine, undone. Oh, it just must be a mistake. And let me tell you about the day I've had. I had this mechanic who was trying to take advantage of me. And then the Mrs. Crawford was like, oh, I have a brother who's a mechanic. Who's yours? And she's like, Sal, blah, blah, blah. And this lady's like, that's my brother, after she's already, called him a crook. And so then Mrs. Crawford hangs up on her and won't deal with her anymore. So now she has to go down to the library, and they send her from the rare book area down into the basement where the billing department is.
Yeah. So this is where we're going to get our other overlapping trope. Instead of this being so much a near-death experience, let me evaluate my life kind of thing, this is marooned. This is like, oh, we got trapped in the ATM, trapped in the elevator, trapped in a car or whatever. Yeah, this is going to be Nell and this lady that we eventually find out is a Hispanic deaf woman who does not speak or read English and does not hear anything.
And can only read lips in Spanish.
Yes, and can sign, but Nell doesn't understand sign language.
And I think that we might be a little bit in the area here of having a person who has made up some sign language. Because, and I can't speak from a place of authority, however, I do know a little sign language, and I think some of her signs are made up.
Yeah, it's entirely possible. They were just doing like, when people try to do like breakdancing or something, and they just make a bunch of movements.
Well, and then there was this whole thing where she's like signing a song. And when you sign a song, sometimes your movements are, sometimes the signs aren't as precise because you're like doing it with the music. And so it's almost like a dance. There's like a flowiness that wouldn't be there if you were just signing. The lady does finger spell accurately, from what I could tell. But there were definitely some other signs that I'm like, I feel like let me hold, like pretend like I'm holding a bowl up to my mouth and spooning food into my mouth and then rubbing my belly. Those aren't real signs.
Well, you know what? We can make a gentleman's bet on it because I hadn't thought about it. But now that I'm thinking of it, that it's possible. But on the other hand, in the 80s, there was a lot of awareness for deaf people. A lot of let's get deaf characters and let's get sign language translations and stuff. And this woman had a particular look that was not super like Hollywoody. And I'm just wondering if maybe she was a real deaf person, and it was
except for the end
opposite.
When she could hear the people from outside the door talking and was reacting to them before Nell could fake sign anything to her to try to get her to understand.
I'm not going to go to the mats for that one. I'm just wondering.
There were several instances where I was like, something's happening.
It could just as likely be a person, a random person with good hearing who is making up their own sign language.
Look, I could be completely wrong, right? Like she is in, the same woman has acted in the Theater of the Deaf. She was like, she's earned a Tony, I believe, for being in Children of a Lesser God with Marlee Matlin, who is a person who speaks ASL.
Everything you're saying is making me think she is. Really.
So legit. But what I'm saying is putting the spoon and holding the bowl and rubbing your belly. The only way that those are real signs is that she was trying to make up signs that Nell would understand.
Yeah, or just some dumb sitcom director was going, "Hey, deaf lady, we don't know what you're doing. Make some spoony, mouthy type movements."
That's what I'm saying. If you go to the trouble of hiring a Tony Award-winning actress who signs for this role, anyway, the whole thing, I was like, something's up here.
Well, before we get her, we get the very fun little neurotic, like, caretaker, bureaucrat character that when she first comes down there and she's like, "Oh, I'm looking for, I need to sort out my billing situation," or whatever. And he's like, "Be quiet! He's like, this is the library."
She's like, "We're in the basement."
Yeah, and so it's like, the joke is that he alternates between shushing her because they're in a library and then screaming himself because, like, nobody takes the billing department of the library as seriously as the rest of it. He's I definitely recognized him.
And then he leaves. And it was, it was such an interesting setup, right? Because they had this woman character who was sitting there waiting.
Yes, she hasn't done or said anything.
And he's on the phone as Nell is coming in, and he's saying, "Yes, get Mrs. Crawford. I need somebody to help me with this customer." But we don't, he makes it sound like the customer is being obnoxious, right? He does, you don't know what the deal is. And so I just thought she was an extra, like not gonna speak. And then when he leaves and the earthquake happens and she still doesn't speak, I'm like, what is going on? Are they really gonna have this woman like not talk this entire time? Like, what, just so they can save money? Like, Nell's in there by herself. What are they doing with this? How are they? And then she starts using her hands, and we realize the big reveal. Nell not only is stuck in this basement because a ceiling beam has fallen and blocked the door, and nobody knows she's down there, or, not many people know she's down there, and so she's freaking out, and she's had a day from hell. Now she's also stuck with a person who cannot hear her or read her lips or her writing.
Yeah. And this drives Nell absolutely insane.
Right.
Like this, it is like the scene in Fargo when Steve Buscemi goes to the other guy and it's like, all right, you don't want to talk? You don't want to talk? Fine. We don't have to talk. I can sit here and be quiet. I'll just be quiet. That's what I'll do. I'll just be as quiet as you. And like, he just absolutely cannot stop talking. And that is what Nell is like. And yeah, they've been trapped down there by a beam. This basically turns into the movie, the World Trade Center movie with Nicolas Cage, where it's like the two people trapped underground hoping for help. And yeah, it is. I didn't know where it was going either. I wrote down like, this is a weird waste of this setup to have Nell trapped in here with this random quiet lady.
Right.
And then finally, yes, they reveal it. And then these two really do go on a journey. Like, it's just them for the most part. The show doesn't really check in with anybody else. And they're just so exasperated. Like, Nell cannot handle that this woman won't talk to her.
Yeah, they kind of decide to go their separate ways, and they both are like pacing and talking to themselves.
The woman draws color-coded stick figures, where she draws Nell as a black stick figure and herself as like a clear white figure. And
not at first. At first, she was just trying to say, like, this is you, like this, like
she's
yo,
trying to show yo and
Usted, right? She's trying to sign that to her. So, but like, you didn't need those words. You could just be like, you. Anyway, whatever. Yeah. There are other words that you could try. But then Nell thinks that Usted means black. She's like, I didn't need some deaf lady to tell me that Usted is black.
It's just, I feel like there are whole movies where like characters don't speak the same language and you see how they're able to kind of get along. Like, it's so funny how these two, they're in like a practical situation together.
Yeah.
Like, beam in front of the door. What are we going to do? How are we going to communicate? And it's like the language thing, it's not just a hindrance. It just completely shuts them down. And like, all problem solving cannot happen.
And they get mad at each other. Yeah. So they get to a point where they're just like shoving each other's shoulders.
Escalating.
And they're like about to get into a fight. And that's when Nell hears the chief and the library guy, the billing department guy. Both of them are like calling to her and saying, hey, we know you're down there. We're working on it. And then the chief is like, hey, they're not able to clear the stairwell. They're going to cut a hole through the floor. So you need to like get under something so you don't get hit by debris. So that's when Nell is trying to like explain to the woman that the ceiling is about to fall and that they need to get under. And she's like fighting with her because she doesn't understand. And they've already been like kind of pushing each other.
Yeah.
And she's like trying to somehow explain that like I can hear people coming through the roof, like pointing at her ears, pointing at the ceiling. The lady is like, nope, not having it. And then another earthquake happens. And so they dive under the counter, they hug each other, and all is forgotten. And then Nell realizes after that earthquake is over, the woman just like turns her back on her and is like, I'm not, like, stay away from me, don't even look at me. And she starts praying on her rosary. Yeah. Nell sees her praying on the rosary and holds out her cross and is like, look, we have something in common.
Bond over Christianity.
Exactly. So then Nell kind of goes on this long monologue about like, I'm Baptist. Are you Catholic? I know Catholic. And the lady like understands, can lip read Catholic. And then she starts telling this story about how she sang Ave Maria and goes on and on.
Childhood insecurities. Yeah, that's the thing. Ave Maria is one detail that this woman picks out of this like 4-minute monologue that Nell does about her childhood. It just, it really becomes this sort of like Emmy episode of like, oh, we're getting serious now.
And the lady stops her and is like, wait.
Ave Maria, you say?
And like is like backing up, like showing her, like rolling her fingers backwards, like backing up. Again, I don't think that's a real sign for backing up. Well, that's just how she's trying to communicate.
Yes, if you're communicating with someone who doesn't know, then you're just playing charades.
Right. And so, and that's what it was. And that, like, now that I know that she is an actual legit deaf performer, I'm a little bit more comfortable with the episode. I was quite uncomfortable with what I was perceiving as fake signing throughout the episode, and I was a little bit anxious. But now I'm a little bit more understanding. So anyway, so she tells Nell to back it up, and then she does this like Virgin Mary sign where she like shows the
nun.
Yeah, like the scarf that the Virgin Mary wears in all of the images of her, the likenesses of her. And so that is why that's when Nell understands, and she says Ave Maria, and the lady says yes, and then she asks her to sing. Yeah. And she doesn't use the sign for sing, which is a sign I know. And I was like, that's not the sign for sing. But she communicates so that Nell can understand that she needs to sing. And so then Nell starts to sing Ave Maria, and the lady signs along with her.
Again, this quiet, beautiful moment that is really supposed to be
They're under
like,
a counter.
Yeah, like, guys, this isn't your average episode of Gimme a Break. This is like, there's going to be Bible songs, there's going to be long soliloquies about her childhood, and then, finally the gruff old chief bursts through with his jackhammer or whatever and is like, don't worry, I saved you.
And that's the end of the episode.
Yeah, this was wild. Like for a while, I was annoyed at like this woman being a waste of a comic foil with Nell. Because again, it seemed like an eternity that earthquake happened and Nell is doing her stuff down there. And you just have this random quiet lady. And I'm going like, what is this? Why couldn't they have gotten a more interesting person like that guy, the pencil pusher guy who is down there? Like, why isn't there somebody for her to play off of? And then when it turns into a deaf person thing, I'm just like, okay. So again, talk about your intersecting tropes. We're not going to have to deliver a baby in an enclosed space, but this thing of like, some sort of disability or some sort of person with a different, there's just something different about them that I'm going to have to contend with. I'm going to have to communicate with them. Just, another sort of like 80s cliche, I feel like kind of worming its way.
Well, and Nell even says, like, there is nothing I can control. Yeah. Absolutely nothing. Like, she's not able to even control the situation that she's in, not only because of being trapped and the earthquake aftershocks that keep coming, but also she is stuck in a room with a person that she can't even communicate with. And they're not able to get past that. They both just get angry at each other. I felt like they could have started the conflict between the two women one beat earlier than they did, because I agree with you. I felt like that what is this woman here for? Why is she so quiet? Went on just a little too long. Yeah. And if they had done that, then maybe that middle part, or maybe they did that because they didn't have anything to write in the middle, because it just felt like they kept arguing and coming to a dead end, and then arguing again and coming to a dead end. And neither one of them was really willing to like try somehow to find a way to communicate. Like, Nell's way of trying to communicate was just saying random Spanish words that she knew, like taco and la cucaracha, and then this woman would sign those words back to Nell.
And it ends up, I mean, whatever, it's a sitcom, it's silly, but it ends up making them seem stupid. Like, they're in this life and death situation.
And at the end, they're laughing while she signs taco, and they both pretend to eat tacos.
Nell goes, we're having our girl talk, tell me how to say taco. But in the middle of the crisis, that they can't just get on the same page and be like, let's see if we can move this beam. Let's see if we can bang on the, like I said before, just basic problem solving. Like, they just come across as like, well, I don't speak Spanish, so I guess we'll just sit here and die. Like, it's just very dumb.
This woman who knows that she doesn't hear would actively try to move a beam that was making the ceiling fall in. And even if she couldn't hear that it was making the ceiling fall in, she would feel that, right?
Yeah.
Like, anyway, the whole thing was a little bit too far in terms of the stretch, but it was still sweet and fun.
Yeah, it was fun. And I took it as a little bit of like a count your blessings thing. The way early in the episode, Nell is saying like, this is the worst day of my life. Like this couldn't get any worse.
Right.
And then she's talking about all of these irritations like the auto mechanics bill and
the mail getting delivered to the wrong location.
Exactly. And so then to have an actual natural disaster and to have somebody who has to deal with this real, difficulty of not being able to hear, just all things that sort of, it doesn't call this out specifically, but I thought like, oh, maybe that's helping her see like, oh, there's things could be worse than having a crooked auto mechanic. All right. Moving on to Alf.
Season 3, episode 25, Shake, Rattle, and Roll.
Yeah, so we talked about the very first Alf when we did our puppet-based sitcoms podcast. We talked about Alf's run-in with the Mafia.
Yep.
This time we're only in season 3 of Alf, but already I feel like things are looking different than in the past. Am I remembering this wrong? Wasn't it the mom from Alf that I called out had the worst hair of any person ever in a sitcom? Wasn't she the one that had the bangs in the front and then the like inexplicably long hair in the back? Like, am I completely misremembering this? Because everyone looks kind of normal-ish in this one.
So I think I remember what you're talking about. In season 1, okay, so what we talked about this when you called it out. What my friends and I called mall hair.
Yeah.
Right? Which was like when we were in elementary school, like in the 80s, all the teenagers at the mall had this like almost like mullet styled hair because you would tease your bangs up really big and puffy.
Yeah.
And then you would like tease out the sides of your head and then the back would kind of hang flat. And the mom had sort of spiky teased bangs but she didn't tease out the sides. She just left everything else straight.
Yes.
And now both she and the older daughter have more curls in their teased out bangs.
Whatever it is, I just had this like vague memory, like a nightmare of years gone by of this woman's hair. And when the episode starts, I'm like, she looks normal. She looks like a lady in the 80s with kind of short hair. So I just feel like everyone kind of cleaned up their act. The boy has a different color hair, I think. He was like a little redhead in the early seasons. And maybe it's just his aging, I think. His hair got more brown and dark. Everybody looked a little bit revamped to me in this, except, of course, for Willie. Good old Willie. Same
Alf.
guy
Look at
he
the
ever
same.
was. Yes. And that, of course, is the secret sauce of the show. We say it every time. We love Willie, that actor that I mistakenly said was a crackhead and like died in the gutter. Turned out that was all weird early 2000s
Like
pre-internet urban legend. But anyway, yes, Alf. This is the earthquake episode. This is going to be all about they had an earthquake, just like all the others. It happens at the very beginning. The family comes down. They're looking for Alf. Where is he? Where is he? Willie goes, it's his first quake. Poor little fella. He's probably scared to death. I
don't know why he sounds like Jimmy Stewart.
Because he does. That's how the guy talks. It's so cute because Willie is always so exasperated by Alf. So to start out with this thing, he's talking about him like he's a little puppy dog that they can't
which
find.
is how he talks about him in every moment that he's not exasperated.
Yeah.
Which is like, it's so funny. It's either one or the other. And the minute Alf walks into the scene, Willie is immediately exasperated.
Yeah, well, it's because Willie, it was his idea. He coined the phrase Alf, right? Remember in the first episode, he just tossed that off like everyone knew what an Alf was.
Wait. So speaking of words like that, earthquake is one of those words I don't think about being Earth specific until I realize that it's only an earthquake on Earth.
Right. It would be a Melmac quake somewhere else. Yeah. Well, let's get to that. This is, I'm sure, same issue I raise every time with Alf, but exemplar par excellence right here when Alf goes, well, what was that? What happened? What's an earthquake, right? Does not know what an earthquake is. Willie proceeds to explain in scientific terms. He explains about the tectonic tectonic plates and
He
pressure
gets
under
about
the
like
earth.
3 sentences
and
in.
Then Alf goes, "Oh, gee, thanks a lot, Mr. Wizard." And that right there is the contradiction of Alf. He knows about Mr. Wizard.
Right.
He knows about this, TV personality on Nickelodeon, but he doesn't know what an earthquake is. And that's always happening. Alf will be like, "Wait, a tree? What's that?" And then he'll go like, "Oh, gee, now I know how Walter Mondale must have felt."
Right.
Like, making these weird references to like specific things and then also not being aware of the most basic building blocks of life. But yeah, Alf has never experienced an earthquake, has never even heard of it. Just like, some of our other characters, this is going to lead to a lot of fear, trepidation.
And soul searching.
Yeah, we're going to have a couple new characters come in to talk about your third season kind of shake-em-ups.
Yeah, who the heck is this kid? This neighbor nephew, right?
This is Poochie from The Simpsons all over again.
So apparently this is this kid's last episode as well. Like, he's the neighbors, the nosy neighbor lady who we've met before.
Yes, Jerry Seinfeld's mom.
Yes, he's her nephew. And then they said, "Oh, are you, hasn't school started, or are you just here for the summer?" And he was like, yeah. And doesn't acknowledge any of the questions that the cast has for him about why he's there. But yet he is allowed to see Alf. And I panicked. Yeah. Alf walked into the kitchen and this kid's standing there. And I'm like, when are they going to cut?
Drop to the casserole dish.
When are they going to cut to this kid freaking out? Well, apparently in this season, he already is in on it.
He's in on it. I get that his grandma or whatever, the parents are not in on it. This is hilarious to me. This is just like Justin Whalen on Charles in Charge.
Oh, yeah. Or any episode. Or freaking Charles himself from Happy Days.
Yeah, but that at least was a character that was around for a while. This specific thing of let's throw in a spunky Italian neighbor kid who's
from New York.
And is somebody's nephew. It's
right.
always the neighbor's nephew who's here because he got in trouble or whatever.
And then he comes in talking like a newsie. He's like, "Hey, yo, when are you going to give me some of that, Alf?"
Yeah.
And then what is happening?
They decide 2 weeks later, never mind, we don't need him. And it's just like Poochie went back to his home planet, right? The kid went back to school, don't need him anymore. So yeah, this little Italian kid is just like, "Hey, oh, whoa, what happened here?" I don't think he really has much to do with anything. I just had to call that out, that on season 3 already, we're pulling out all the stops of I think we need a Vinny Del Pino-esque neighbor kid to come in and just shake things up. Our 2 kids in the family aren't enough.
They're not enough.
They're not spunky it.
Right. We need an in-between age kid who can say inappropriate things to the older teenage daughter.
Yeah.
And who can, spar with Alf a little bit more than Brian can because he's young.
Yeah, exactly. The funniest part of the episode, I think, is Trevor, who is the man neighbor, Jerry Seinfeld's mom's husband, right? He's outside. He's all kind of shaken up. Willie's like, come on in. And he feels the door frame of their house and he goes, "Is this structural?" And then a few minutes later, when they've gotten rid of the neighbors and Alf is asking the parents all these questions, he's like, "So you're saying this was actually not really a bad earthquake? They can be worse than this?" And the mother's like, "Well, yeah, I mean, it's rare, but earthquakes can actually be a lot worse than this." And Alf starts feeling the frame of his old familiar, kitchen pass-through window thing and goes, "Is this thing structural?"
Immediately just taking advice from the other scared guy. The thing that I liked about this episode, though, was that they decided, because this is how Willie is, that we should use this experience of this, Alf, this being an unknown thing to Alf as a learning experience. So they, Willie, not only does he try to explain how earthquakes happen, but then he's like, we don't have to be worried about them because we are prepared. And they go out to the garage and they start taking inventory of all of their hurricane preparedness. You know where I come from. All of their earthquake preparedness supplies that they have. Well, it turns out Alf has eaten all of their foodstuffs. And he's like, a 3-week supply. It only took me an hour and a half.
Yeah, he goes, he orders $476 versus worth of jugs of water.
Right, like 3 times the amount of water that they say they need. They decided they needed to have like 35 gallons of water.
Yeah, so the guy shows up, the delivery guy, and he's like, is there a Gordon Shumway here? Because that's Alf's
his name.
alias. Or rather, Alf is his alias. His real name is Gordon Shumway. And yeah, there's a point when, like, Alf is trying to justify all this to Willie and the mom, I forget her name, and they're just, like, glaring at him. He goes, I know that look. I find it unsettling. I love the Alf dialogue. He nails his bed down, or he nails himself to the bed. He does some sort of construction.
Yeah, he's trying to nail his bed to the ground.
Because he doesn't want to slide down the stairs.
Right, he doesn't want his bed to like shake so much it gets over to the stairwell and falls down the stairs. And he's, Willie's trying to tell him that's not going to keep you safe. Like, the bed's just going to continue to shake.
Alf goes, I could put you in one of these babies for $99.99.
Right, and then don't they have an aftershock? And that's how he realizes that the nailing down the bed isn't going to work.
Yeah, does this one have more than one earthquake? I don't remember.
There was something that made him realize that nailing down the bed wasn't going to work, and I don't remember if it was another aftershock or not.
This is definitely, our least, special effects driven episode.
Yeah.
I feel like we don't get a lot of
That's because that set,
debris.
we've talked about how what a death trap that set was because of all the trenches. Be able to interact in a way, it's not like the Muppets set where everything can be up high and you just know you're going to shoot regular people from like chest up, right? But this set is like they're trying to have a normal sitcom set, and they had all of these trenches, that people could fall into and trip over.
You don't want to start adding on rigging the cabinet to explode and stuff. So this leads to Alf's very sort of sitcom-y. He says straight up, I have a new philosophy. Every breath I draw could be my last. So eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we may croak, right? He's having just this,
and he's walking around the house being like, sorry, Brian, I'm going to go savor your parents for a little while.
Yes, he goes, we need to savor everything.
Right. And so it is a good philosophy. So Willie kind of lets it go for a little while until he realizes that the way that Alf is kind of taking this idea of, living life to its fullest and really, savoring every moment is actually out of fear, right? Yeah. It's one of those things like, oh, I don't really believe in God, but I go to church because, well, you never know, kind of a thing. And so Willie has to have a talk with him about like, hey, your philosophy isn't wrong. You're just, you're taking it to an extreme where it's actually hurting you and scaring other people.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is that it sort of contaminates Brian, the boy. They find him hiding under the bed, and he goes...
with a helmet on, because he's worried that, like, at every turn...
He's scared, yeah. Alf had explained, well, in Hawaii, there are volcanoes. In Florida, there's old age, right? That was a funny joke. He says, her Earth is hazardous to your health. There's just disaster everywhere. So, yeah, Brian is hiding under the bed. When the parents find him, he goes, this is where I live now, right? So we've got a very, sort of Full House-esque, like, all right, let's all sit down, let's talk about this. And yeah, this is, it's cheesy and sitcom-y, but they do get at the very real thing of, Willie explains, like, look, you are right. We can't say for sure that this stuff won't happen. We can be almost sure. And that's like, you just have to kind of find a way to live with that. And that is the truth about existence. Like, we can't eliminate risk. It simply is more healthy for us to somehow, accept it.
Right, for sure. And I think what's interesting about it is that they do a really good job in this episode with making that conversation not feel Full Housey and not feel like really simplified, really for kids. The writing in this and also the guy who plays Willie, his acting elevates it, which is something I never thought I would say about Alf, that it's elevated in a way, but they do. They take this life lesson and they make it doesn't feel cheesy, even though it 100% is cheesy. Yeah. It feels like an actual real life lesson that you can learn from, kids and adults.
Yeah. When Willie, he explains catastrophic expectations, he kind of outlines this new view on life, and Alf goes, does this leave room for savoring? And so,
and he's funny. Like, you absolutely can savor, but you shouldn't be savoring because you're terrified that bad things should happen. You should savor because it is the point of life to live it to its fullest.
Yeah. And so in a way, this, very sitcom-y, but this is closest to the sort of platonic form of what I would think one of these earthquake sitcoms would be. It's like it shakes you up literally and there's sort of dealing with, what can I do to possibly keep myself safe from this thing that could strike at any moment, and then sort of gradually coming back to earth and,
literally coming back to earth.
All right, let's finish it up with Modern Family.
Season 2, Episode 3, Earthquake.
Yeah, we've covered Modern Family because of the little girl rapidly aging. This is a show that lots of people like. It's one of the newest shows we cover.
Even though it's not really new. Yeah, it's like not 15 years old.
Yeah, but that's kind of what I was going to say, is that it's now that we've got some distance from this era, the sitcoms of this time, there's just such a distinct feel about them.
Yes.
It's that pacing. It's just like jumping around all over the place.
Yes.
It's funny how,
and with little music interludes, you know what I mean?
But we talked about how when you do the really old ones, like Andy Griffith, it's like the 3 acts of the sitcom that are broken up by the commercials are just going to be 3 scenes. We're going to be in the living room for the beginning, in the store in the middle, in the kitchen at the end. And then the ones that we grew up on, you still had those 3 acts, but you kind of bop around a little bit more. Right. And now the 21st century shows are just, because they have the single camera format, because they have this faux documentary feel a lot of the times, it's just like, it's like you've got hundreds of scenes. It's just like bop, 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 bop. You're flying around everywhere. It's not like an A, B, and C story. It's just like all this stuff happening.
Yeah.
And what I'll say is, I think for me, The Office and 30 Rock made it work because they were always in like the same physical space. Like everything is happening in this office. Everything is happening in Rockefeller Center. And so it's like, there's just this sort of like feeling like everything is together, even though there are these different things unfolding. With Modern Family, I'm sure they're together some of the time, but with this one, it just really seemed like these different things happening, and it's just kind of like, and now a little bit more of this and a little bit more of that, and you know what I mean? It's just kind of like a bunch of stuff.
Well, okay, so the way I kind of make it work in my mind, right? Like, I think the way you're making the connection to that faux documentary feel, to me, this is like Friends, but amped up a notch, right? There are so many storylines in Friends because there are so many different friends, and you'll have like 2 or 3 of them having this one plot, the ABCD plots, right? But they're all kind of living in the same apartment building, and they might be in different places for different scenes, but there's going to be some kind of crossover, right? That's what this is, except they're all in different houses because they're all part of the same extended family. And so instead of having the like, oh, they're going to bump into each other in the apartment later or in the hallway later or at Central Perk at some point, what happens is you get Sofia Vergara calling, to see how they're doing. Oh, I was just on with Phil. Hold on. I've got call waiting. Like, let me check in with them. And so but that's the connection. It is still these ABCD stories. They just have less connection action than they did and they aren't trying to tie them together in some way other than the comedy button that's going to come and hit for each one of them.
Well, and the irony is in this one, they are all tied together because they're all reacting to the earthquake.
Right.
Just like all the other shows we're talking about, the earthquake happens at the beginning and then everyone else is dealing with it. But it's still, despite that fact, it just really felt to me like these sort of different things happening. The funniest part is when they're on the phone and someone goes like, "Oh, we lost Phil," meaning like he dropped from the call.
Phil? Oh, no.
And then they go like, "Oh, and now Gloria's gone too." And they're like, "What, Gloria?"
Gloria's gone, and they're like, what's his face is like crying in the background. The guy who plays Cameron, he's like crying in the background. He's like, "Oh no!" And then they realize, oh, just lost them on the phone.
Yeah.
So, all right. So we've got kind of three distinct stories that are happening at the three houses. You've got Ed O'Neill and Sofia Vergara, and their conflict is he doesn't want to go to church. He wants to go play golf. And she's like, "So are you just done with church? Are you never going to church again?" And he's like, "Yeah, I think so."
And the earthquake ties into that because she sees it as some sort of
sign. He's like, if God wanted me to go to church, he would give me a sign. And then there's an earthquake. And she's like, "Is this not a sign?" And he's like, "No, it's just an earthquake. Like, whatever." And then he runs over his golf clubs and she's like, "Isn't that a sign?" And he's like, "No."
Yeah, and there's some funny stuff with the son. Like he kind of takes her son under his wing and, it's like, "Oh, you don't need to go to church. You can be part of my religion," or whatever.
Right.
And they, there's some funny stuff that happens with them. But again, it just, to me, it felt very disconnected. It's just like, oh, like once in a while we'll get a scene with Ed O'Neill and this kid. And like, because I don't watch the show really, I'm not super invested in all of it. I'm just, I smirk sometimes at the dialogue and stuff. But their story especially was just kind of like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So look, I think this show is very funny. And I think you're exactly right that it now has its place in time. Like going back and watching this episode from 2010, you can tell this is like a, mid 2000s kind of look.
Post 30 Rock, post
Exactly.
Office.
And it's still fun. It's still very funny. It felt less of an earthquake episode in the Ed O'Neill storyline than it did in the So the storyline that felt the most like the earthquake was the Phil and Claire story.
Right. So let's talk about that one now, because this, I have to say, for a show of this time, being in the 2010s and not back in the 90s and early 2000s, I was a little surprised at how kind of jaded and depressing this aspect of it is. And again, I don't want to be, I don't want to always be banging that gong of like, why can't everybody just get along? Why can't people be nice to each other? But the whole Phil and Claire story here is just, it's another one of these, he's lying through his teeth and it's supposed to be funny that he's lying and he's kind of a shitty husband. And
That's
just
funny.
like,
I didn't see it that way.
to me, again, understanding that, what's this actor's name? He's really popular for a while. Yeah, understanding that Ty Burrell is, he has that certain way about him. He's got a unique presence. He's a funny actor. And so not really knowing the specifics of the relationship, but just sort of thinking like, oh, I'm sure this will be funny. I'm sure. And then that it actually turned out in this particular episode anyway, to just sort of be another Ray Romano, like, aren't wives always asking you to do stuff? Don't you have to just lie to them to shut them up sometimes? Kind of
That's
thing.
really funny. I didn't, to me, this was not that way at all.
Well, explain what their story is.
The setup with their story is that Ty Burrell's character, Phil Dunphy, right? Phil he wants a honey-do list. He wants to be responsible for all the fix-it needs in the house, but he doesn't do them.
Yeah, he's
so
incompetent / lazy.
Right. Well, and exactly. And so it's kind of, this was the whole running gag on the Cosby Show, was that they had to sneak around to call a plumber so that, Dr. Huxtable wouldn't try to fix the sink, right? It's a famous episode of the Cosby Show. And this is that same story trope replayed again. You've got the dad who is, well-meaning and wants to be responsible for the fix-it things
and
in the house.
Some sort of masculine value,
personal
in his
pride, exactly, in his handiness, and isn't handy. And so Claire has been asking for the toilet in the upstairs bathroom, or the drain or something in the upstairs bathroom, to be fixed for a long time. He hasn't done it. She's called a plumber. The plumber shows up in the midst of her having this argument with her daughter, her older daughter. They're always kind of fighting about things. She wants to go to a party instead of doing homework, but she's grounded for some of the things. So they're just like yelling at each other. And then the plumber shows up and Phil's like, oh, what are you doing? We don't need a plumber. I was going to fix that. And she's like, okay, whatever. And then they're going up the stairs and he's like, see, I do things. I fix this stair step, which, of course, Chekhov's gun. Within like 2 scenes, that stair step breaks again. People start falling down the stairs. Very funny. And so then the earthquake happens. And their youngest, the boy, almost gets crushed by a cabinet that fell over.
Yes, this is something we know all too well. We recently purchased a wardrobe thing, and we had to sign a legal document saying
I will strap this to the wall.
I hereby vow to nail or screw this thing to the wall because the physics of it are such that it will tip over and kill somebody if it is not secured.
Right, exactly. And we don't have kids, but we do have a little bit of a rambunctious dog that if she ran into it hard enough,
we're law-abiding citizens.
It might tip over, right? So he hasn't anchored this tippy hutch that they have to the wall. It falls over during the earthquake, and the boy was laying on the couch, and it landed where his head was.
Yeah, and Phil is trying to sort of gaslight him and go no, that didn't happen.
It didn't almost fall.
It didn't fall. Yes, it did. No, it didn't.
No, it didn't. And so, but he gets a reprieve, right? So he's in the middle of this, wanting to be the fix-it guy, and now all of his house of cards is just crumbling around him. And Claire gets, during the earthquake, the bathroom door jams. So now she and the plumber are locked in the bathroom, and Phil's like, I have a window of opportunity. Yeah, so he says he's going to go get his tools, but really, to get them out of the bathroom, but really he's getting his tools to attach this cabinet.
Yeah, we've got another maroonment situation, right? Just like Nell.
Yes.
Now Claire is marooned in the bathroom with the plumber. The plumber goes hey, do you have a crowbar or something? And Phil goes, he's through the door. He goes, oh, what do you think? I'm some kind of dandy that doesn't have a crowbar? And the guy goes, well, you did use the word dandy. But yeah, this is what I mean. And again, look, I'm not saying it can't be funny, it can't be good sitcom stuff, but just the thing of Phil is great. She's locked in the cabinet or in the bathroom. Now I can lie. And so he's going to spend this time, he's going to be oh, just a minute, honey. I've almost found it. And he's going to spend this time to secure the bookcase that he was supposed to do before. And there's a point where, as he's doing it, the little kid, he says something, whatever. Phil goes, just hang on a second. I have to go make sure that your mom's still stuck in the bathroom. So whatever. It's fun, but it definitely, like I said, I had thought by this time we were moving a little bit beyond this model of marital dynamics. Not to mention, and I'm sure this is very true, but just the whole family, the 2 teenage girls just constantly blackmailing each other and this is very much like the 2 girls in Charles in Charge, or a Lisa Simpson thing, where the one who doesn't want to go to the party wants to go to the Museum of Tolerance because she is comically nerdy, high-minded.
Yes.
Yeah. But so yeah, you just have this kind of thing, and I get it. I'm sure a house full of teenagers and stuff, everybody's kind of scheming against each other and a little exhausted with each other. But there was just a lot of sort of like ill will. And
and you're not wrong. And that is the function of this particular family in this modern family universe. There's this episode where the younger son like loses his bike because he doesn't lock it up. And the reason he doesn't lock it, like Phil protects him. It's all about like trying to shield the mom from the fact that he's ended up buying like 2 bikes for his kid because he didn't do the thing that he said he would do. I mean, there's many episodes of Phil as like the oh no kind of, derpy husband. That is his role. That is their function within this show. And I think the reason that it's more palatable than something like a Ray Romano or even Married with Children is that it's one of the stories. It's limited to this little bit. And so it's just the highlights. And most of the time, like by the end of the episode, he actually does learn a lesson. He's not just like a dumbass. You know what I mean? He is like, oh, I'm so sorry. In this case, though, he just flat out goes in on his daughter blackmailing him because the smart daughter, figures out that he is trying to hide the fact that this cabinet fell over from mom. And so he's like, oh, what a day. And she's like, yep, perfect time for the Museum of Tolerance. And he's like, you're right. Let's go relax there. And then off they go. Yeah. So that's how we know he's been taken by the middle daughter.
Even the daughter who was so high-minded is just like, bold-faced lies to the mom and says,
this is how I get what I want.
Dad was checking the gas meters and everything, making sure that nothing had sprung a leak.
He was taking care of us.
But so you're right that it is one of the 3 families, but it also is like sort of designed in this, sort of white heteronormative world we live in, that they're sort of by default the main family. And
well, that's interesting. I don't think that's true. I think that this episode just had more of them.
Maybe. That was always kind of my assumption. But anyway, let's move to what I think is by far the most fun storyline, which is Mitch and Cam. They're the most appealing aspect of this show in general to me. They are very funny. Their little daughter, Lila or whatever.
Lily.
Their whole thing is going to be that they're supposed to go to a party with their friend Pepper, who we meet him later. He's played by Nathan Lane, very much in like the Birdcage Nathan Lane mode. I don't know if we've met this character before, but he's this crazy sort of ostentatious, eccentric weirdo who throws these themed parties that are getting more and more elaborate.
Right.
And they
these
don't want to
themed
go.
brunches that always, and that you have to dress up for. And so we get a interview segment with Mitchell, and he's like congratulations Pepper, you've made the gays hate brunch. And he's also Cam's ex.
Okay, I don't think I caught that. I guess that does play into it at the end. But this one is their Oscar Wilde themed brunch.
Right.
So they're wearing these like weird old-timey clothes and everything.
Very camp.
Yeah, and this, when the earthquake strikes, their take on it is going to be that that's their excuse to not come to the thing.
Yeah, Mitchell is looking for a reason not to go. Cam is just sort of like, whatever, we said we're gonna go. I don't want to lie. I'm bad at lying. So we're just going to go. And so, but then Mitchell's like, wait, we could have been hurt in this earthquake. Let's say that we're hurt and let's just like use that as an excuse. So he's putting his foot down with Cameron. Mitchell's tired of always having to be the one who has to lie to get out of whatever their plans are. And he's saying, Cameron, you're always saying that you don't like to lie, but you're like a mob wife. You like that I do the dirty deeds so that you can be this like good person.
You need to pull your weight.
Exactly.
It's just in the grand tradition of sitcom phone lying, right? That sort of thing of like, oh no, I can't go because my mom is in the hospital. What disease does she have, you say? Just that sort of like losing control, losing the thread. He's explaining to Pepper on the phone, oh, well, everything is damaged and the window is broken and this thing fell through the glass or whatever.
And Cameron got hurt. Or no, Mitchell got hurt really bad.
And so, of course, we're only hearing Cam's side of the thing, but Pepper is telling him, well, I'm just going to come right over and help you.
Yes.
And so Mitchell starts destroying the place to match the damage that has been described by Cameron.
Right. So Mitchell's breaking a window, and he's like, you said a hat rack fell through the window, and then he's affecting a limp, so he can be like, you said I was hurt really badly, and he's like, this is what you did, and Cameron's like, no, let's just walk it back, I don't want to do this, and Mitchell's like, no, this is what you did, we have to do this now, I'm all in, come on, get on board, we're not doing this. Well, then Nathan Lane shows up, Pepper shows up, and we find out everyone has canceled on brunch.
Yes. And again, it reminded me a lot of his performance in The Birdcage, just that full-on sort of drama queen, I can't take it anymore, He's going,
why doesn't anyone like my brunches?
Yeah. And so they go, you're not a joke, you're Pepper Saltzman. What a great name. Yeah. And then they end up going into this thing, Mitchell says... Is it Mitchell that says Cameron still has feelings for you or vice versa?
Yeah, so Cameron comes clean immediately. Mitchell limps out of the room shortly after Pepper arrives to go get them some tea or something. And Cameron comes clean immediately. He's like, well, since you brought it up, that the other people canceled. He's like, we really didn't want to go either. And so, we were trying to use the earthquake as an excuse. And that's when Nathan Lane goes into the whole, so then Mitchell walks back into the room and he's like, seriously, Cameron, you couldn't keep it up for 12 seconds? What the hell? And so then Cameron is like, I'm going to handle it. And he's like, Pepper, you're great. I promise there's nothing wrong with you. It's just, well, I'll let Mitchell explain. And he immediately throws it over to him. And so then, of course, Mitchell comes up with something. And the thing he comes up with is... Cameron still has feelings for you. And that's his lie to get them out of it. And Cameron's so mad. And then we get the talking heads with them later on. And he's like, you're a mob wife. This is the bed. You deal with it.
Yeah. And so Nathan Lane lets them off the hook. And that's it. It's like we were saying, it's just these three stories kind of chugging along. And there's funny stuff around, but it's the least sitcom-y. And I don't know. Whenever Cam and Mitchell are, we just kind of explain the plot, as it was, but they're always fun. Just their whole back and forth is just...
and look, not to say that the other actors on this show aren't great, but particularly those two. And then later on, when Lily is a little older and they replace her with the older girl who ends up playing her through the rest of the series, they all have really good timing. They're very funny. I mean, Jesse Tyler Ferguson is a Broadway guy, Tony Award winner. You know what I mean? You just have some really good scene actors there and physical comedians as well.
Not to mention, it's a different perspective. It's just not the same, oh, cool. The daughter wants to go to the party, but the mom doesn't want her to, it's changing it up
a little bit.
I also, just as a random thought, the time that this was going on in the 2010s, I started thinking there were 3 Married with Children alumni, in pretty major TV roles at this time. You have Ed O'Neill in this. You had Katie Seagal was on that Sons of Anarchy thing.
Oh, and 8 Simple Rules, right?
And Christina Applegate was doing lots of stuff. She was doing her Samantha Who and then things for Netflix and whatnot.
This might have been in the in-between time, though, because Samantha Who, I think, was earlier.
Yeah, that was a little earlier, but she's had, what's the one? Dead to Me is her Netflix show. But she's...
That was later.
But she never really went away.
No, this
like,
is
she's
around
been
the time
around.
I think that she was doing Sweet Charity on Broadway, and
Sure.
she was like out and about
It just occurred
and
to
doing
me-
movies like Sweetest Thing.
Yeah, like it's pretty normal for a random 80s, 90s show like that to maybe have one person that kind of made it out and continued to be a presence, that a show that was so sort of like in the gutter
Right.
as Married with Children actually has like a pretty amazing ratio. Because
Yeah.
even Ted McGinley, that's
Yeah.
his name, right?
Yeah.
Ted McGinley, too, I'm sure he was bopping around. He's probably on some doctor show or
Oh,
something.
he's always
around
on
that.
something. Exactly.
But yeah, it ends with a talking head from Ed O'Neill. I don't, it's something about his worldview, his religion. I don't know.
Right, being unchanged. Well, no, so Manny, the button on this that was the best it was Manny, which is the little boy who is
Right, Sophia's daughter.
Yes, or Sophia's son, exactly. And it established early on that he's like afraid of butterflies. He has
Right,
this
right.
horrible fear of the like flapping wings of the butterfly. And so while he decides not to go to church with his mom and try to praise the altar of enjoying nature by going golfing with his stepdad, he has so many questions. He drives Ed O'Neill's character crazy during this golf trip and asks him more about the existence of heaven and hell and what they are than, he's really prepared to answer. And so Ed O'Neill's giving these like confusing answers. Manny just is like, wait a minute. So you don't even have a whole religion. You're just making it up as you go along. And I'm putting my soul on the line for this. I got to go to church. And so he's like, get me out of here, gets him to take him back to church. And then after church, he's sitting there talking to his mom at their like kitchen island, and he's like, yeah, wanting to know more about heaven, more about hell, like what are these places, what happens after you die, because he's feeling very at sea. And she's like, heaven is a wonderful place with rainbows and butterflies, and he's like, butterflies, and runs away. And she's like, no, Manny, no, butterflies not there.
I did not understand when I was originally watching it that this character is canonically terrified of butterflies. And
Well, I don't know about canonically,
part
but
of
they
the
said it
joke.
at the beginning of the episode.
So, yeah, earthquakes. What do we think? Best, worst, MVPs?
So I think maybe the reason that you were kind of ho-hum on the Modern Family is that we had 3 pretty good classic sitcom examples here. Sanford Son and Alf and Gimme a Break were all really solid, like 70s, 80s, and I guess even into the 90s, these just like classic nostalgia examples of sitcoms dealing with the trope in the various ways. And so I think the reason that Modern Family fell flat is because the other episodes were good episodes of relatively bad television, right? Whereas Modern Family is good television, and this was just sort of a okay episode, right? And that's the issue. The MVP is, for me, Sanford & Son, 100%, because of all of the live action stunts and live action stuff that they were doing. You know how I am about when it feels like I'm watching a play and all of that craziness is going on. I love seeing them break character. I love when they leave it in and they don't do another take. I think that's great. So yeah, that was the best for me.
Yeah, totally. This is very much, this is why we do the work, right? Because just to see this same idea and just all these different takes on it that were kind of the same, where everyone gets all scared and has to rethink their life or, try to come up with a solution to something that has no solution. And yeah, it was fun seeing Sanford goes to Vegas, Al nails his bed to the floor.
Or Alf.
Everybody's different strategies. Yeah. But, I'm with you that Sanford & Son was great because of that vaudeville aspect of it. The weird location shooting in Vegas was great.
Yeah.
Just their whole all right, everybody, we just got here. It's 2:00 now. We have to be back on the plane at 8 p.m. Let's shoot enough of as much of this sitcom as we possibly
And
can.
we didn't even mention the Merv Griffin cameo, right?
Yeah.
Which was like, and
several
there were
cameos that you got the impression like the people just happened to be there.
Right.
And they're like, oh, hey, you basketball guy, come here and
Come
do
on
this
over
scene."
here.
Yeah, so that was really fun. But honestly, I kind of feel like my favorite was Alf because of just, again, the sitcominess and kind of watching Alf. I keep wanting to call him Al. Watching Alf.
He's your friend.
Go through those paces of like, what is an earthquake? What do you mean that they can be so much worse and they can't be anticipated? And like, you know, trying to work it through, the little kid saying, I live under the bed now. To me, that was like the sitcom-y goodness that I look for in terms of an earthquake
People dealing
happening.
with their anxiety in various ways.
Yeah,
It felt very personal to you.
And the wisdom of Willie being like, look, all you can really do is hope for the best.
The wisdom of Willie. I like that. We should have that as a little thing. What's the wisdom of Willie in this episode?
All right, so much for earthquakes. What are we talking about next week? That is a mystery, even to us. But for now, we will consider this segment of the sitcom study concluded. Thank you for listening to the Sitcom Study. Tell us what you think or share your own TV tropes and topic ideas by sending a self-addressed stamped email to sitcomstudypodcast@gmail.com or find us on Facebook or Instagram. And if you like the show, consider leaving a rating or review on your podcast app. It helps us boost those precious Nielsen ratings. The Sitcom Study is recorded in front of a live studio dog.